Today on the Travel Magazine, 2 exciting destinations for your next vacation. We'll visit Sydney, the gateway to Australia. It's the nation's oldest and largest city. A harbour cruise and a visit to historic Sydney town are 2 stops on the tour. But first, to another capital city in Scotland.
Hi, I'm Bernie McNamee, and welcome to the Travel Magazine from Scotland. And this is Edinburgh, described as one of the most beautiful cities in the world, the Athens of the North, the jewel in the Scottish crown. However you describe it, Edinburgh is impressive, rich in history and culture. We're going to take a tour of Edinburgh, which will include a stop at the famous castle which hovers above Scotland's capital city. But right now, we're going to travel north to the town of Pitlochry, where a Scottish tradition has been celebrated annually for almost 140 years. We're in the town of Pitlochry, site of one of the oldest and established Highland games in Scotland. It's a time for music, dance, and athletic prowess.
Well, they started in 1857 and they've been run basically every year except during the 2 wars. They were resuscitated after each war, so they've been going for that time.
Here we have a stationary tug of war between Elgin in red and Square Inn in yellow.
Well, there are a number of events, really. The traditional ones are the heavy events, that's throwing the stone, tossing the caber, and throwing the hammer as well. And then you've got the dancing, the Highland dancing, which is on the board. That's again traditional. Always have been athletics, running and jumping, and latterly there were cycling events since about the beginning of the century. It looks a bit chaotic, but what happens is that we try and have 2 or 3 things on the field at the whole time, and those have to be slotted in so as the hammer throwers don't throw it into the cycle race, etc. But so that basically there is something happening all the time for people to see.
Exactly what they're up to. Any moment there'll be an explosion of energy.
Did you toss the caber back when you were younger?
Can you imagine me tossing the caber? Bit like a stick of rock or something, you know, I'd put up in there, wouldn't I?
What about tug of war?
Tug of war? No chance. Whoa, man.
Some of these events may seem a little different, but they take a great amount of strength and skill.
The Glasgow Sky Association pipe band under pipe.
In this event, contestants toss a 56-pound weight over a bar. Here in Scotland, they say it's like tossing half a bag of coal over a double-decker bus.
Next stop on the hammer, Eric Irvin. And there's a fine one.
Eric, congratulations. First of all, 2 firsts and 2 seconds. It was a good day for you.
That's right, pretty good, yep.
One that looks most difficult to me, though, is the caber toss.
Right,
Describe that to me.
Well, that takes a long time to get good at that. It's basically trying to turn the caber over. If you imagine a clock face, you're standing on 6 o'clock. If you turn it end over end, a perfect throw is if the small end lands on 12 o'clock. So the judge looks at wherever the caber lands and judges it like a clock face. So it may land at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, or at 12 o'clock. It's a perfect throw.
You put on a nice performance out there. Were you nervous at all?
No, not really.
Not really?
No.
I guess that comes with doing them over and over and over again, the dances.
Yeah, it does.
How about you? Were you nervous at all?
No, because I've done so many, it's just like second nature.
Now, there was another band playing in another area while you were dancing. Doesn't that confuse you?
Well, you're concentrating on your own music, so it doesn't really make any difference how many people are playing. So,
What does it take to be a good Highland dancer? What do you think?
a lot of practice.
How often would you practice?
Every day.
Every day?
Yeah, every day, for at least an hour.
What's the secret to playing bagpipes?
It's hard to do. You've got to get a steady pressure on the bar and keep it filled. It takes a lot of energy. My granddad was a piper, so he started me off. So he learnt me a bit, and I just liked it ever since.
How do you think you're going to do in the competition?
Oh, I don't know. There's some good pipers, and we'll just take a wait and see.
This particular game is a major event, is a pipe band competition, because this is the only pipe band competition that's held that is restricted to Grade 1 bands. The judges belong to the Pipe Band Association. They come in on purpose to do this, and they judge the playing of the pipers and the drummers, how together they are, how well they play, how well they march, their presentation generally and their appearance, and it's done overall on that, and they mark out the points.
The highlight of the games is the closing parade by the massed pipe bands. The Travel Magazine will be right back with more from Edinburgh, Scotland. Edinburgh is a compact city of 500,000. Its architectural treasures easily accessible to the visitor. But it's Edinburgh Castle that dominates the horizon.
The castle goes back many centuries, pre-Ice Age, matter of fact, and is an extinct volcano. Coming up to date, after the Ice Age, of course, the castle became a natural fortification for the local inhabitants of the city of Edinburgh. The castle changed hands many times, to and fro with the English and the Scots in what we call our Wars of Independence. The oldest building that we know of on the Castle Rock is Queen Margaret's Castle, which was built in honour of Queen Margaret by her son, David II, and that would have been in the 12th century. Mary Queen of Scots gave birth to her son, who was James VI, here, up on the top of the Castle Rock. Mary Queen of Scots wanted James VI to be baptised a Catholic, so he was virtually smuggled out of the castle from a top window, lowered by a piece of rope in a basket, and sped off on horseback to Stirling, where he was baptised a Catholic.
Besides being the most popular with visitors, Edinburgh Castle offers a fantastic view of the city. At the end of the Royal Mile, you'll find Holyrood Palace, the Queen of England's official residence when in Scotland.
Holyrood Palace is situated a mile from Edinburgh Castle, and it has a very interesting history dating back to Mary Queen of Scots. Some of the very important things, or dates, where things happened at Holyrood Palace would be Mary Queen of Scots' forced abdication in favour of her son, James VI of Scotland, who became James I of England, and also the murder of Mary Queen of Scots' secretary, David Rizzio. The abbey that stands beside Holyrood Palace actually was ruined in Mary Queen of Scots' time again. We refused Mary Queen of Scots' hand in marriage to the English, and the English sent the Earl of Hertford north and most of the Scottish border abbeys were ruined.
The only thing more distinctively Scottish than a kilt would be the bagpipe.
Mine's are handmade, and I've been making handmade pipes all my life for various other firms, which I get no glory at all. It was the firm I got all the glory. I do my own thing now, which I believe is good drawings, and what's more important is a good pipe chanter. That is, it's a good true, plenty of volume. There's bagpipes made all over the world. Different countries have their own type of bagpipe, but the Scottish bagpipe is the one that's known all over the world.
The skirling of the pipes evokes strong emotions. You either like it or you don't.
Well, you surely don't have to be Scottish to enjoy the history and hospitality here. Whether you're touring the landmarks of Edinburgh or strolling through the legendary countryside, Scotland is definitely a vacationer's dream. We now head from spectacular Scotland to sensational Sydney, down under in Australia.
To get an idea of just how the Sydney of 1788 greeted Captain Arthur Phillips and the 1,480 men, women, and children who accompanied him to Australia, we welcome you to Old Sydney Town. 40 acres of reconstructed shops, houses, government buildings, located in Gosford, about 45 minutes drive north of Sydney.
Old Sydney Town is an authentic recreation of life as it was in Australia's 18th century.
What are you doing here, woman? Hey?
Some of the inhabitants here in Old Sydney Town take their roles very seriously.
Good afternoon. Afternoon, Your Reverence. That was a little bit apathetic. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I must say how pleased.
Many of the characters are taken from actual life histories, gathered from diaries and journals of the times.
Old Sydney Town is also a showplace for crafts that have all but disappeared.
Old Sydney Town is easily reached by car, but it's also served by coach tours, and there's a lovely train from Sydney that will get you here as well.
Old Sydney Town should whet your appetite for modern-day Sydney. Parts of its heritage are still preserved in the Old Town section, called the Rocks. This is modern-day Sydney, the bird's eye view, as seen from the Sydney Tower right in the heart of the city. Much of Sydney's character has been dictated by the magnificent harbour, reputedly the best natural harbour in the world. But from here you're also drawn to the expanse of parkland that cuts from the harbour through to the city centre. Even this parkland has historical significance, explained to us by noted Sydney historian and tour guide Maureen Fry.
It was part of the governor's own garden, this area, and in 1816 Governor Macquarie built a wall to stop the convicts from pinching his fruit and veggies, as we call them, and all the land in 1816 to the north of that wall became the Botanic Garden. The Botanic Gardens is always such a wonderfully tranquil area of Sydney, and it's really quite surprising when you consider how close we are to the city itself. We just look across Farm Cove here and you can see all the tall buildings of Sydney, and a lot of people come here during their lunch hour because it is so peaceful.
Speaking of old homes, Cadman's Cottage, that's the oldest house?
There is an older house at Parramatta which predates it by 1 year. 1816 is the house Cadman's Cottage. Governor Phillip, when he arrived here, set aside a vast area of land, and it was the governor's domain. We just refer to it now as the domain. The Botanic Gardens is part of that land, and it was so far-sighted of him, really, because had he not set it aside, I'm sure it would all be high-rise development now. And at the top of it is Hyde Park, which was named by Governor Macquarie after Hyde Park in England. And the very first race meeting in Australia was held there in 1811. The statue of the boar is in front of Sydney Hospital, and if you walk past you'll see how shiny his nose is. That's because if you rub his nose you get your wish. So most people who go and look at this boar rub his nose and make a really rather special wish.
From the historic to the spectacular, Darling Harbour covers an area almost half the size of the whole Sydney business district. It's an ambitious city development still in progress, yet it already includes the largest Chinese gardens outside of China, several museums, and the Sydney Aquarium. The aquarium is unique in the world. Besides conventional tanks with fish from various habitats around Sydney, visitors can also walk through transparent tunnels in huge pens right in the harbour, with harbour and ocean species swimming all around you. Darling Harbour is also a good place to shop, with a wide selection of items uniquely Australian. Australia produces 90% of the world's opals, so this is definitely the place to go shopping for them.
One of the comforting aspects to travel in Australia is that there's no language barrier. They speak English here. Sort of.
If I wanted to, I'd walk a few yards that way and I'd go to the Rubbity-Dub-Dub, which of course is the pub. And if I drank too much, I'd wind up Molly the Monk, or just plain Molly, which means, of course, drunk.
I'll have a schooner of tuies, thanks, mate. Just another way of saying a pint of beer, please.
Well, if I was to say Brumby, I would mean a wild horse. Nay.
Fair dinkum. Means genuine, good stuff.
We're a couple of Aussie Sheilas. When someone's telling you a story and you don't believe what they're saying, you say, don't come the raw prawn with me.
Coming up next, ferry across the harbour with a tasty stopover at Manly Beach.
If you want to see more of what's around Sydney, you're in luck. There's lots to do.
Sydney has beaches both along the harbour and oceanside. The most famous is Bondi, the surfers' beach, in season all year round. There are really hundreds of bays and coves that comprise Sydney Harbour, and there are numerous tours and cruises that explore Sydney from the salty side. For bargain hunters, you can't beat the Urban Transit Authority's ferry service. We took the ferry out to Manly on the north head of the Sydney Harbour with Captain Axel J. Breivik.
The distance is 7 miles, and I allow myself 30 minutes from point A to B. But should I run late, I can tell the engineer or request the engineer through the talkback system, can you flash up another engine, and we can do the trip in about 19 minutes.
Today, Manly is restaurant heaven, with 64 dining spots in less than half a square kilometre. And, lucky us, the Taste of Manly Food and Wine Festival just happened to be in full swing the day we arrived. Manly offers everything from the familiar to the exotic. Along with the foods, the wines. Australia has a very prolific wine industry. The Hunter Valley is New South Wales' premier wine region and less than 2 hours north of Sydney. Tyrrells is one of the oldest in Hunter Valley, currently run by Bruce Tyrrell, a fourth-generation winemaker.
The first grapes were planted here in the 1830s, and this area really was opened up to get an alternative supply of alcohol for the colony. There was the government on one side, who was supposed to be in control, and on the military on the other side, and they controlled the rum. So in fact, they controlled the colony, and this area was opened up to plant grapevines to break that control. My great-grandfather came here in 1858. He took up a land grant here of about 330 acres. They planted the first vines in 1862, and the first vintage was 1864.
The Hunter Valley is actually famous for its red wines. They're sort of a Burgundy type?
Yeah, Burgundy's a good description. This area is warmer than most of the areas in Australia, so we get our grapes ripe. And you get that little bit of extra alcohol and flavour. So our wines are softer, more generous, I think is a good word for them. Well, I suppose people come here, the first thing that they do see is there's plenty of vineyard. You really drive in through those. All our crushing, our vintage part of the winery is right at the top. It's the first thing you come into. Walk down through the old original part of the winery. We've still got the dirt floors, a lot of old wooden casks. We normally follow on down there to where we make all our Chardonnay, which is a big cool area full of small oak, through our bottling operation and dispatch operation. So really here people can pretty well follow it the whole way through.
At the end of any tour, obviously, should be a taste of...
Oh yeah, well then that's the most important part, most people reckon, is to be able to have it to taste. The sensation you get when you smell it should be the same as when you taste it. And you should have a flow of flavour that runs all the way down. And the better the wine, the further the flavour will go.
If you're coming to the Hunter Valley on a winery tour, the Hunter Valley Wine Society will pack you a picnic basket if you like. They'll even take note of some of your preferences in wines and pack your favorites along for the ride.
A bit of advice for the North American tourist to Australia: don't try to see the whole continent on a 2-week vacation. It's a big and diverse country. Try and make the time to really enjoy each distinctive region. From Sydney, I'm Deborah Burgess for the Travel Magazine. Catch ya!